Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through all the popular BookTok books. BookTok is like a part of TikTok that's just all about books. I think it was 2021 where I started seeing book TikToks and stuff. All these books are going to be from 2021 to now. I'm gonna start with romances. I have a lot of varying opinions on these books. Hopefully I'm not offending anyone, but you know, they're just my opinions. Addicted to You. Okay, to me, this book itself, Addicted to You, it's not what I'm judging it based off of. I'm judging it based off of its whole series that it's a part of, because that is what makes this book so special. What really stood out to me in the Addicted to You series was the found family and just the love between all of them, and the fact that you get more and more brought into this world that you really start to feel or at least I really felt like I was a part of it. I'm not done with the whole series. I will be finishing it eventually, but honestly it's kind of scary how attached to these characters I got, and it was actually making me feel too much. I was like, this is too many emotions, and I actually stopped the series. I'm not even kidding, that's why I stopped reading them. It was taking over. This first book, I did not really enjoy reading it almost at all. A lot of it I didn't enjoy reading. It brought me in and it held my attention, but I feel the fact that the main characters were dealing with addiction, it was really hard to read about. I feel there's just a lot of things that are worth it in this book and the series. As you continue reading, it gets easier. The first book is pretty hard. Red, White, and Royal Blue is the first official romance book I've ever read. This is a book about the first son, I think that's what it's called, when it's the president's son. The president's son and the Prince of Wales, a romance, an enemies to lovers, rivals to lovers romance between them. Maybe not rivals to lovers, enemies to lovers is better. I cried so much while reading this book because it's a powerful book. I do remember getting bored because there was a lot of work that they were doing. Alex, the first son, he had a job in politics and he was doing work for it and everything. And I don't know, I think I remember him working and me thinking that it was a little bit boring, and that's the only bad thing I had to say about this book. And other than that, all good things, and I thought it was really good and it's really worth reading because that's not even a huge, it doesn't last too long. Love and Other Words, it's one of my favorite books ever. I'll just say that. This is just one that I 100% don't regret reading because it's so good and amazing. Emotional roller coaster book, but in the best type of way. This is the type of emotional level that I want in a romance book. It's perfect in every way. It brought me in. I never got bored. I read it so quickly because I remember I just couldn't stop reading it. Next up, Beach Read. This is not my favorite Emily Henry book, but it's definitely one of my favorites. Well, there's only 3 out, I think. People We Meet on Vacation is my favorite just because I just love it. This one, I actually think Beach Read might be the second romance book I've ever read. So first Red, White, and Royal Blue, and then Beach Read, and then I think I read People on Vacation, which ended up being one of my favorites. So what I think about this one is that it is really good. I remember, did I ever get bored? I honestly don't remember ever getting bored. I think I just really liked it. I thought it was a really good book. It's about 2 writers and it's really cute and they bring each other on dates. It also has that emotional side that all Emily Henry books have had so far that makes you cry a little bit. And there's this part where there's letters involved and I cried. I cried so much. The Love Hypothesis. I loved reading this book. This is one of those books where you just feel happy reading it. It's such a good experience. There's a bunch of tropes that occur in this. There's fake dating. There's the one bed trope, kind of. It's a joke on the audience because the author is referencing the reader audience and cliches and romances in the book, so it's kind of fun. It's a bit of a grumpy, he's a grump, you know what I mean? So if you're someone who likes that dynamic, then you will like this. We're done with romance. I'm gonna go on to literary fiction. I didn't know whether to also choose Daisy Jones and the Six, but I love that one, but I'll just talk about Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. It's definitely one of the most beautiful, amazing books I've ever read. I highly recommend everyone to read this. It was kind of one that took me so long to just start reading because I was intimidated by it, and then it took me a little bit to actually get into it. So I will say that is one thing, is it took me a bit to actually just get into it. But I love it and I'm so happy that I have it now, and my mom has even read it and she loves it. It's just such a good book. The Inheritance Games is super fast-paced and interesting. It's a YA literary fiction, even though at my Barnes & Noble it was in the fantasy section, so I don't know if it's it's not really fancy at all though. It makes me feel like I'm having so much fun. It's just such a fun book to read. It's a fun, lighthearted mystery book with a love triangle. It's not super scary. It's actually not scary at all. It reminds me of Knives Out. I know I've probably said that a bunch of times before on this channel, but it's very accurate because it's a wealthy family, then an outsider, or in Knives Out case, a staff from the family inheriting a bunch of money, and the family being a little bit what is happening. Okay, now we're on to fantasy. Shadow and Bone, one of the most famous ones, I'd say, because it got turned into a Netflix show. Another part of the Netflix show, they like mixed in Six of Crows. Shadow and Bone comes first, and then Six of Crows takes place later. Shadow and Bone I really liked. I thoroughly enjoyed all of the books. I overall just think they're really solid fantasy books, and I would recommend them to people if they ask. I would even recommend them to people if they didn't ask. I just think it's a really good series, but I do absolutely love Six of Crows even more, because I think everything is a bit more fun in this book. It's more fun and it's more fast-paced for me. I don't know what it is, but something about this book. I also think I got a bit more attached to the characters in Six of Crows. I am a sucker for a good heist in a fantasy book and like a really good found family, and there is a found family in both of these, but Six of Crows, I love the crows. I love them. I think they're so worth the hype. A Court of Thorns and Roses. I thought the first book was a little bit boring. Maybe it's because I already knew what's happened, but I did read part of it, or maybe even the whole thing, like years ago. I didn't love it, so my like final review of the first one would be like, I didn't love this one except for the worm scene, because that was like one of the best things I've ever read, and I love that scene so much. I'm not gonna spoil it, but like that was such a cool scene. However, the thing about this book is like when it starts getting more and more into the series, actually the second book might be one of my favorites out of the entire series. I really do like the last one that came out too. I thought it was very strong, and like the stuff that was talked about in it, I cried multiple times. I feel like if you start watching like book videos on TikTok, you cannot not see a video about this series. You can't not see it. It's gonna show up somewhere. But yeah, so all in all, my opinion is that I think this series is worth the read. I did not really like the first one, but I really loved a lot of I really love some of the other books that came after it, and I like the characters. I like the concept. Oh, this is a fae book, by the way, with a bunch of romance in it. It's like so romancy. Next up, Shatter Me. I think this is another one where like the first book, I wasn't a big fan of it. I didn't think the first book was that good. I was still like, okay, you know, it's decent. But then I kept reading and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Especially by Ignite Me, everything changed. It goes Shatter Me, Unravel Me, Ignite Me, and then Restore Me. And then it goes on from there. There's like novellas and everything. I've only read until Restore Me. We'll eventually read more of it, probably. I really enjoyed it, and I just think it's an amazing series. I know there's so much left to read, and it really is an easy series to get sucked into. Like, it's not high fantasy or anything, so it's pretty easy to like get into it. And it's just one that I would recommend to someone who's maybe even starting in fantasy, or someone who's already reading fantasy and they just want like a cool series. Red Queen. I enjoyed this book. I thought it was good. It kind of reminded me of The Hunger Games. Kind of reminded me of some books, but it was unique in its own way, and it's like definitely its own book. I just wanted to say that to kind of give you like the vibe. I did really love this book. It has had a twist. I'm like going back and remembering. Probably would give it like a 4 out of 5. Like, I really liked it. It wasn't one of my favorites. I didn't really feel the need to pick up the next book, and there is a lot more in the series, so I do know that a lot of people love this. Dance of Thieves. It has been a while since I read this, but I do remember the romance being a really big part of this book. But then I felt like them actually falling in love with each other didn't really show it. It just showed like time passing in like a sequence almost, and described little moments. I felt like all the good stuff, like the tension and like the buildup of them like actually falling for each other, I didn't get any of that. And then just fast forwarded to when they're like already, like it went through those scenes, and then they're like all of a sudden like in love with each other. Like, I just remember that's how I felt when I was reading it. I wanted those like moments that were built up, that built the connection, so I felt like it was real when I was reading it. These Violent Delights had such beautiful writing. I'm looking back, and when I was reading this book, I did get bored like quite a lot through it, and I wasn't really following the story as much as I feel like I should have been. The writing in this book, it was just so beautiful and poetic. Like, some of the quotes in there, I was like, wow, I want to remember this quote forever. But yeah, I personally, it just wasn't really for me. I for some reason could not get like into reading. Like, I couldn't get stuck into reading it. The Cruel Prince, I'm just gonna say I love this book. It was so good. Fae, magical, beautiful, whimsical, everything that you'd ever want. And oh, like very badass and a lot of political plot lines, and also an enemies to lovers plot line that is just one of the best enemies to lovers plot lines I've ever read. It's so good. I just feel like everyone should give this series a shot. We Hunt the Flame. This is one that I feel like I want to try and reread to see like if I'll like it again, because I just remember I did get a bit bored through this one, and I was kind of like, my attention was not grabbed. So that's all I'm gonna say about this one. I don't really remember that much. I just remember that my attention wasn't completely grabbed, but I feel like it definitely has potential for maybe like a future reread. Kingdom of the Wicked, I really loved the first book so much. I was obsessed with the first book. I couldn't stop thinking about when the next one would come out, but the next one I didn't really like nearly as much. And then the third one I'm kind of afraid to read because I'm not really sure I'm gonna like it. I started reading it and I was like, I don't really like it that much for the third one. But just know that the first one is amazing, and I love the first one so much, and the vibes are immaculate. Maybe I think I like it best when they're like partway in the human world. I don't know. Like something about being in hell in the second book was like not as exciting for me as like them being up there, but like all the spooky stuff happening. Everything was like a mystery, and in this book there's still mystery, but it's like, I mean, like they're in hell, so it's like, where are you gonna go from there? Last up, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I personally got so bored when I was reading this book, and that's really all I have to say about it. I got very bored. I think it has very beautiful descriptions and language in it, and that's a really cool part of it. But overall, I wouldn't recommend it to someone because I did get bored throughout it. But I've had like whole conversations with people about this book, and they're just like, love it so much. So this is like a very controversial opinion for me, but I don't know, I got bored, and I think it was partly because of the descriptions, the long descriptions. I also kind of felt like I didn't really know the main character, which maybe I was supposed to feel like that, because Addie LaRue, it felt like I saw her in little glimpses, and I never really like completely saw her. Like I didn't understand how everything she had been through and like her whole life added up to who she was. But maybe that's kind of part of the point of it, because she like is snippets of all these people that she's been in her life, because her life is so long. It's like 300 years long. I feel like this is really confusing if you don't know like the kind of the plot of it, so I'm kind of just banking on you knowing the plot. It's about this girl who makes a deal with the devil basically to escape her life, to be like married to this guy in an arranged marriage. And so that was like a bunch of years later, I mean a bunch of years before, and then fast forward to her like 300 years later, still living, because joke's on her, she has to live like forever because she said she wanted her life back. Super interesting concept. So yeah, those are all my opinions on a bunch of book talk books. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos. Also, if you want to be friends on Goodreads, my Goodreads is in the description, and you can like keep up with everything that I'm reading, and I can see what you're reading. And yeah, I don't know, I don't really do whole reviews on there that often, but I do them every once in a while, so that could be fun. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.